Welcome back. You're watching Siasa Fiesta here. And of course, I'm holding a brief this morning. Not holding a brief, but I'm holding court this morning with Owen Bai, who is the Deputy Majority Leader in the National Assembly. We have Farah Mali, Member of Parliament for Dadaab. Also, we have a Member of Parliament of Seme. This is Dr. James Nyukal. We just had Isaac Mora. He had to leave. He got an early, of course, call that just came in that he has to be in a meeting somewhere, so he begged to leave. So we continue with the conversation nonetheless. The issue at hand is the IEBC selection panel, and of course, what will happen to that particular selection panel as it is right now, and the constitution of a new bipartisan approach ad hoc committee that will make sure that the entire process of getting commissioner is smooth flowing. But where did it begin? Let's just listen to, of course, Rita Tinina, who is putting into perspective the story on the bipartisan approach.
This matter can be handled in Parliament by a bipartisan parliamentary process.
We stand down our demonstrations for Monday, that is tomorrow, April 3rd, 2023.
Barely hours after both President William Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga struck a ceasefire deal that ended the 2-week nationwide demonstrations, the head of state has embarked on a race against time to fulfill the promises contained in the Azimio La Umoja One Kenya counter offer, which accepted the olive branch from the ruling party. The president Monday meeting the parliamentary leadership of both houses to consider the proposal for a bipartisan approach to addressing the matters raised by the opposition. The president directing the leaders to treat the matters with utmost priority. The head of state also tasked the leaders to come up with a formula to nominate members from both political divides to an ad hoc committee to fast-track the issues.
The bipartisan approach, in my view, would include probably an ad hoc committee, since there is no standing committee that would look at many of the issues that have been proposed.
The president remaining confident that the issues will be conclusively handled by Parliament in order to allow focus on economic transformation program. The committee is expected to have 2 co-chairs and an equal number of members from both the ruling party and the opposition party. Azimio is also said to be in high-level consultations to identify members to the committee.
We agree that a balanced parliamentary process, co-chaired by both sides and backed by experts from outside, should proceed.
It will be up to the committee to decide how do we address issue number 1, how do we address issue number 2. But I think the most important thing is what I did hear the president say, that we must all act in line with the constitution and the laws that are there.
In 2016, a joint select committee on matters related to IEBC was chaired by the then Senators James Orengo of Siaya and Kiraitu Murungi of Meru, with 14 members drawn from both parties. However, Kenya Kwanza has maintained that the ongoing truce should not be confused with a handshake.
There is nothing touching on a handshake. The bipartisan approach is an approach that looks at the interest of the country over and above the partisan interest.
This comes as the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nordin Haji, dropped charges against 6 Azimio MPs, among them National Assembly Majority Leader Opiyo Wandayi and his Senate counterpart Stewart Madzayo. The opposition leader had asked the president to unconditionally release those arrested during the demonstrations as a sign of goodwill for standing down. The developments are expected to jolt the IEBC selection panel, which has already advanced with the selection process, with at least 920 people applying to replace the 6 IEBC commissioners and 25 throwing their hats in the ring for the electoral body's chairmanship. The current bipartisan talks will be akin to the 1997 Interparliamentary Parties Group that gave way to the constitutional and statute law amendments, and the process saw the first handshake between the late President Daniel Moi and Raila Odinga. Emmanuel To, KTN News, Nairobi.
And clearly that's the voice of Emmanuel To and not Rita Tinina, as I'd earlier indicated. My apologies. And we just want to put that into perspective as we continue with that particular discussion so far. And we were to hear from Farah Mali. Farah Mali, you've seen the faces of Kiraitu Murungi, James Orengo. 2016 is actually the year when we had this particular joint select committee. we don't learn from our history. We should have fixed this particular problem then up to now. And the question that I wanted to put to you is the fact that also it seems from all this conversation about the dialogue, IEBC is the overarching issue, and Kenya Kwanza is not really determined to actually see other issues being actually discussed or resolved.
The IEBC is the only thing that we can hang on to, because everything else makes very little sense. And I'll tell you how IEBC also makes absolutely no sense.
It makes no sense?
Absolutely. But, you know, we cured the mischief that was there before by the statute that came into force, which created the institutions. The panel is not something that the government of the day will choose from left, right, and center and look for their friends. The panel is of institutions, the religious sector, the Parliamentary Service Commission, which, by the way, has got two positions, and one is for Azimio, the other one is for the other side. Usually that one is not a deal, not an issue. The PSC, the PSC, the Public Service Commission, the, what do you call,
Law Society of Kenya.
Yeah, Law Society of Kenya, which of course is there, and then the interreligious, and PPLC. The only thing, for example, right now, which we could feel that maybe we might not get our person, is that one for PPLC, because PPLC is a political party's liaison committee. The party that has got more numbers than the other is more likely to kind of push its way, elbow its way. And that is only to say we have two. One from the opposition side, by and largely, although we are looking for independent people, by the way. The idea of settling on institutions from the beginning is so that you can get independent people who are not beholden to any of the political actors that are there in the contestation for the presidency and the political power in the country. And we have these institutions. We cured that. People talk about PPG. The IPPG. I was there. And I was one of the architects of the original IPPG, well, basically what eventually ended up to IPPG. We started the NCEC. And we said the NCEC, at that time, the political actors wanted to create a political summit. And we decided we were not going to create a political summit. We were going to create this process because we're seeking a new constitutional order for this country to be independent from the political machinations of the day. So we're looking for independent people. And that's why we ended up with William Mutunga, you see what I mean? Who was an acclaimed, what do you call, jurist, and everybody respected him as one of the chairs, co-chairs. And then we ended up with William Mutunga because Ahmed Nasir, who was a young, what do you call, lawyer, and at the same time teaching at the University of Nairobi, who had contested for the deanship and won the deanship. But because he did not satisfy the other requirements for the deanship, was basically, was not given that opportunity. And then Ahmed Nasir was not willing to take it. So we settled on William Mutunga, Bishop Ndamburi. And the people who were at the center of it that time was myself, Paul Mwite, Richard Leakey, you get my point? And the idea was that let us have a new constitutional order in this country that is as much as possible devoid from the political contestations of the day. Kivutha Kibwana came and joined us later, much later actually, as a matter of fact. And so when we were just about to deliver that, and the whole nation was carried on board, when we were about to deliver that, listen to me, Dibal.
Yes.
We had a kind of a Kamukunji in Uhuru Gardens. And a young lady from the university, a student leader, I believe from the Lake region. She's called Ndombi or Ndomi or something like that. No, it's Ndomi. She had a name. Very brilliant young lady. She stood out there and said, we have achieved. The moment Daniel Arap Moi had stood down and was willing to engage us, and the international community was saying, this is a revolution. This is the revolution. Talk to NCEC. It is not a political, steamroller. It is a national steamroller. Kenyans want change, and they want to have a system that they can rely on. And they need a new constitution. And then, of course, the government of the day decided they were going to sit down with us. The moment we got to know that we have won that, at least that hurdle, we went to Kamukunji, and this lady comes out there and heaps all the praise on Raila Odinga. Listen to me carefully. All the praise and the whole credit for the whole thing on Raila Odinga as the guy, the person who has come out and supported this process more than anybody else. You know what Kibaki did? Immediately we moved out of that place, the Kibaki group, which was in the thing, the Kraitu, Kibaki, and all of them, reached out to Daniel Trotich Arab Moi. IPPG was basically a deal cut between Kibaki's stalwarts and what do you call the government of the day. The political, what do you call, contestation and the desire to try and pick up something that is very close to the hearts of Kenyans, and the moment it reaches somewhere, just before we deliver the victory, or the victory is delivered to us, the political elite now to pick that thing and run with it for selfish political purposes was what cost us. These people went, negotiated with Moi, they were given their 10. You know, you get my point? They said, okay, we have 10 members of ECK that time. You can have your 10. And we got our 10 on board. We got our 10 on board. That came back now to Parliament for us to determine in Parliament, depending on the strength of Parliament itself, for us to appoint it. And we appointed. Did that resolve anything? No. We didn't. It did not resolve anything. We still complained the next elections and said the elections were rigged. And actually we began complaining about our own members of IEBC that time, or ECK that time, as being part of that. And then we came back again. We then had the coalition government when we created another IEC, and then later on collapsed them into the IEBC. There was the Independent Boundaries Commission, which was headed by Andrew Ligale, and then there was also this other one which was headed by Isaac Hassan, the committee of initially committee of experts, and then later on IEC. We came together. I don't want to name names, but the same group that we supported Isaac Hassan, in our coalition that time, ODM, we supported many others. I'll tell you their names. They were the ones we complained about later on, and rightly so, as having sold us out. You know what I mean? And rightly so, because some of them, that was a mess. That election, there was a serious problem with the IEBC. So what I'm trying to say is that, look, you know, you can do everything. You can say bring it to Parliament and still lose out. The person you have, if now the political parties liaison committee appoints two, the only contention right now that we can say we have achieved is that one slot. One slot, nothing else, because you cannot go to the religious sector and say that it is UDA. So we're not going to accept the religious sector. Or you can't say that LSK is UDA, we can't accept it. We cured that problem by picking up institutions to help us steer this country's issues, reforms for posterity in a manner that is independent, you know, of any political hang-ups. Now we're coming back. Like I told you yesterday, I was telling somewhere, look, we tried to do everything possible to try and get rid of Moi, let me tell you, in the 90s. Finally, we decided, look, whatever we play is not working out very well. We probably should say that the one who is going to run for the president, we have a new statute in Parliament that has got to be less than 70 years of age. We tried to move that. Of course, it couldn't fly. You know what I mean? But the whole idea is that all the efforts that we are doing out there only came down to only a desire to take over political power.
Thank you.
Now, you can't create crusades, or you can't create movements, or rather, I don't want to use the word crusade, but you can't create movements only for the sole purpose of that selfish political interest. That's why I've said Kenyan politics has always been and will continue to be the way I see it myself right now, about political elite deal making.
Thank you. Just leave it at that so that we can hear from Owen as well. Listening to Farah, it seems that he's already given up on IBC. Even with this reconstitution, with the bipartisan, he knows the outcome. He's been there.
I want us to.
He's done that and bought a T-shirt.
I want us to invest in technology so that nobody can steal it.
Okay, let's say from Owen. It seems then that we'll be
not in individuals. Because those individuals will be still, tomorrow you say that they've been paid a lot of money. We said that the Supreme Court was paid.
He's a problem, Raila himself, who has, issues with the IEBC all the time. Because even when you look at this serialization, you can see Isaac Hassan saying that it is only Raila that gave him a hard time when he was at IEBC as a chair.
Let me tell you this, Dibal. I think one of the problems that we have as a country is that when you lose an election, you do not want to accept results. You want to look at someone else is the reason why you have lost an election, not because you have lost the vote. And that is actually where the problem is. Because look at the journey of IEBC. Look at it. We keep on changing its names, we keep on changing people there, but the results, the people's results, have constantly been, we reject this, but we approve this. But when that happens, someone always feels that, no, I think it was unfair. Isaac Hassan himself was more of a Raila nominee at that time. And when Raila lost the election,
I had a big role in him getting nominated on that.
Yes.
And I suffered as a result of him more than anything else.
So when he came back and said, no, Isaac Hassan must go. In the last election, I remember there were songs about Kivuitu must go. There were songs about Chesano, the other guy, must go. We came, I remember, Chesoni. 2017, there was that Chiloba. If you remember the Chiloba saga. I was in ODM then. Chiloba saga, and Chiloba must go. This time, Chibukati must go. But if you look at all that, there's one person who feels dissatisfied with all these chairmen. And that is where the problem is. But more importantly, is the use of violence. Use of one thing, a currency called violence, to try to dominate Kenyan politics and try to sway this country into a direction that you think will favor you eventually. Because every time we have a loss of an election, somebody loses an election, he brings the new currency that is violence, and you force within the national psyche that you see, the problem is not me, the problem is them, is IBC, is the new government in power. And therefore you want now to bring in all these issues so that you can create a new platform for the next election. Because this IEBC that has become now a subject of discussion now is a platform for the next election. How do I win the next election? Reconstitute IEBC so that I have a good platform for me to win 2027.
That was a perception of Vazimio.
Yes, and today...
It's all about power.
Today it's about...
Do we invest in individuals so you cannot be sure that
they're
going
to... So today, let him finish.
Today, IEBC is being reconstituted. Not because IEBC will reduce the cost of food today. We are talking about 2027. That is the whole thing. But we are saying as government, it's okay. If we reconstitute IEBC, we will have peace in this country. So be it. Let's reconstitute IEBC and have the peace in this country so that we can use the mechanism that we have as a government to lower the prices of food, the prices of commodities. But we must condemn the use of violence to try to intimidate a sitting government or try to intimidate Kenyans into accepting what is unacceptable. It is unacceptable for us as Kenyans to continue on this path that every time we have an election, then the following thing that follows is violence, and then after that there's a national dialogue. After national dialogue, we said to say, change IBC. We cannot be changing referees if you're a bad player. However bad a player you will be, a referee will not make you win a game. Because IBC is just a referee for an election. But you're not training. You don't have a good coach. You're not doing the right things. But you think if I have a good referee or a referee of my choice, then I will win the match. I want to tell our partners in Azimio, this country must move forward. And we need to leave all this. All these things, all these small, and if you look at examples in East Africa, countries have been stable. Rwanda is a good example of stability because they do not have these issues of an election, then a violence here and there. They looked at their past. They saw their past that this violence that they used to have, these wars between intertribal wars that they used to have, were pulling them back. They realized that mistake. And now they have had a regime of Paul Kagame, of course, it's been there for many years, but it has created stability for them. Today, Kenyans are looking at Rwanda as one good economic miracle within East Africa. Why? Because they do not have these. Look at Tanzania right now. It is surpassing us, Tanzania, because they don't have this issue of violence every time. But the common denominator at the bar is only one person has given us all these issues. And I want to tell you what President Ruto thinks. President Ruto says, I will not go there and get a handshake with Raila. He will not go into a handshake with Raila. He will not. What he will do is he will allow institutions to play their role. We need to bring peace in this country, stability in this country through institutions, not through personalities. The presidency must be respected as an institution. The presidency must be given its opportunity to work. Parliament must be given its opportunity to work, so that at the end of the day, when we have this bipartisan approach, and that's why he has said, let Parliament do it. We have this bipartisan approach. It will not be about Raila Odinga. It will not be about William Ruto. It will be that Parliament of Kenya, the representative of Kenya, has made a decision to reconstitute this, and therefore we want to move forward on this. The other issues that are said to be in contention, and that Azimio has raised, the issue of opening the server.
Yeah.
You know, opening the server, every time you listen to that story of opening the server, it's the same story of 2017. The same story of past 2017, open server, which server? The High Court, the Supreme Court gave an opportunity for people to scrutinize the server. They had an opportunity within the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court made a decision, and institutions must be respected, and said, this is the result. But then you come back and say, you know, there's a whistleblower. Only one person, a whistleblower who said, I won. And you want the whole country to believe one whistleblower who, you know, if everybody, even in my constituency, somebody lost. Now, if that person now comes and says, you know, I have a whistleblower who told me that Owen lost and I won, and everybody, governors, everybody believes a whistleblower, will we have a country? We must respect institutions. That's why we will have a country. And that's why the 2010 Constitution was crafted the way it was. It gave prominence to institutions and independence of institutions, and said, let these institutions govern this country.
Thank you.
Yes.
Owen, I just wanted to hear from Dr. Njikal, because he's read a raft of issues.
Yes, I'll
and you have an ultimatum of, is it 1 week? How long is it?
So let me say this.
Until Thursday.
Let me tell you, the while you are sitting here,
Yes.
you must see the circumstances. We are sitting on this table and the whole country is watching us. This, in my view, I may be wrong, this table must show that as a country, as people sitting here, and on this table, you as a journalist and we as leaders, people take us seriously. So if we are in a mood where we want to get a solution, we must not allow ourselves to slip into an area that makes it look like, okay, that thing I don't think is going to work. If the leaders of them are talking like that, because we don't know. Owen, you may find yourself in the panel. Nikal, I may find you may find. If then we'll sit here and we look like we certainly have certain deep-seated things, we have not relaxed ourselves and said we may need to look around, that is dangerous. But having said that, that is key. For me, however hard you feel, however strong you feel, where Kenya is today, having passed those last 2 weeks, we must create a mood where people think there is hope. If we sit on this table and when people look at us and say, hey, those are the guys that are going to go on this bipartisan thing, we don't see it working. That point, I think we should take it.
Thank you.
Then we now come to why. The reason I've said here on this table, the reason we have a problem in this country we have not solved is there are just two. It is corruption and tribalism and exclusivity. So that even when we set up a good system, and Honorable Farah was saying, how long we set a good system, we think it is good and we hope it is going to work. At the end of it, we have a problem. It's because we agree that system is good. In our hearts, we don't. And the person who then is through whatever means they get into power, now starts to actually not go by the system, but use their position to get exclusivity, to give corruption comes in and unfairness comes in, people are not included, then that system has not served what we wanted. And if it falls upon one person to keep saying, no, you are out of the way, no, you are out of the way, so be it. If it happens to be Raila, so let it be. But we must say, why is it that we define a system that every time we do? Me, I believe it is, and I've always said in this thing, let's create a nation where our hearts are, and so that even in victory, or even if by force, or by sleight of hands, you get yourself in a position of authority, then you make sure that there is inclusivity and that there is no graft. I'll tell you, the people will be happy because they'll get what we deserve. But even if you rightly win and use the system that was designed, and once you sit there and you then don't share things out equally, recognize the diversity of the nation that this constitution is all about, the desire to kill corruption, and you don't promote nationhood in the hearts of people, we will still come back. That is the problem. I would say that my party leader is the unlucky person that he keeps saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. So be it. Let's leave that and say IEBC as the only thing that we seem to be discussing. I think again, for what is going to go on that has not gone on, I would say that IEBC has been a point that has been able to brought us together and bring us to the table. Let's not exclude the others. I don't know who is going to be in the panel, but whoever they are, IBC is an important one. But let's not leave out the cost of living. Yeah. So those ones must come there. And the issue of exclusivity and the issue of that. So what I'm saying, even, let me tell you, even if you are to come with the perfect thing about the IBC and you don't address this, sooner or later people will say, well, what is this? So I believe if this thing has brought us to the table, even if in a distant manner we can show that what we are doing is going to touch the cost of living, is going to touch inclusivity, that must be shown this. And so I don't want to say IBC is the only thing. Then we say just one position. You know, this country, in many, many institutions that we have created in this state, and even our laws, when we are getting commissions, when we are getting committees in this, we always want an odd number. That is something we agree. Why do you want an odd number? Because then it is easier to get a clear distinction of which way people want it. What makes that one odd number? One person. As I was saying earlier, the straw that breaks the camel's back is one straw, but there are thousands and thousands and millions of straws that the camel has been carrying. So that one position, if it's IBC, let's look at it. The other issue about all these things is ownership. Ownership and acceptance of a process. Even if a process is perfect, if ownership is disputed and some people feel excluded, even that needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
So I think that comes to that. And when you talk of violence, that's something we could discuss. I've been in these particular issues that we're in. There are three groups of people in a demonstration. They are the demonstrators themselves. There is the police themselves. And they're basically criminals that infiltrate, whether they come on their own or they are sponsored. So that is what creates the violence, not the people who are actually honestly and sincerely want a demonstration to express their view. And we can go on that. And this issue of the press now.
All right, you're raising a lot of issues that we'll touch on. I agree.
Okay,
but I wanted just to go systematically from IBC.
Okay.
You've raised a raft of them. even for me, I'm losing track of what to follow right now. I just wanted to ask you, because Azimio has been very categorical that we want restoration of the subsidies, not even the Cherera 4, the subsidies as well. When you're talking about the cost of living, and we know how contentious subsidies has been so far, in light of where the economy is right now, we know it's tanking well over. How practical is it right now?
Now, very practical. It is not just the subsidy. The cost of living is subsidy is one of them. The other one is the cost of power. The other one is the cost of fuel. The other one is the taxation. So if you have to look at the cost of living, you will have to look at power is now going up by 16%. Whatever we do, the cost of things will go up tomorrow. If the cost of fuel, the diesel and the petrol we are using is not touched, that will affect the cost of living. We have to use our taxes, VAT and so on. That is, then subsidy is one of them. Now let me tell you about subsidy. In my mind, I'm not now talking as a new position, but I'm talking as somebody who has lived out, has gathered a few things about economics, although I'm not an economist. Now, but there are certain basic rules in life that are the same. When there is an emergency, you cannot insist on a long-term measure. You must address the emergency also. Subsidy, the way I see it, could not and should not have been seen as something that will go and support us forever and then talk of its sustainability. Subsidy, in my view, was to address the current crisis. And then we are taking other measures that I agree, like we are looking at fertilizers and the production of food. But you can't tell people who are starving today, just starve when we are now going to plant and we are going to bring this, and in 3 months you're going. I would have said, what do we do now? Even if you have to have subsidy for that short while we are working on this thing of producing food. And God, we are a blessed country. In 3 months in this country, if you have rains, we can produce food. So subsidy is practical as an emergency measure while we are going for long-term and medium-term measures.
Right. So do you hold with the view that also Azimio should go full steam ahead with seeking the demand for a subsidy? And we've had the president has been very categorical. The subsidy is not really practical in this country.
This one thing, it was abused. Terribly abused. And you're talking about not less than 45 billion Kenyan shillings, which has been siphoned off. And let's wait and see the proper audit for that report, and then we'll be able to look at it. But secondly, who benefits from this? Look, you're talking about power. Who are the people who have taken the cost of power to the level it is right now? The independent power producers, who are being paid for their capacity, not for their, what do you call, consumption.
At a higher rate.
At a higher rate. Who did it? The government of none other than Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta.
Put it correctly.
Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Who are the beneficiaries? He is one of the people who are directly serious beneficiaries. Who are the biggest shareholders in KPLC? You get my point? Who own these things? You see, sometimes when you know where the problem is. When I'm hungry, I need to feed. So all I can respond to is the banks in my stomach. Kenyans are hungry, and they are what do you call responding to the fact that they need food. Now you as a leader should tell them where food is. You see what I mean? Power is very expensive. Tell them where the power, how the expensive power has come to. You don't blame on a government that has been elected only 6 months ago. And all these things were done by people we know. You know, I remember some times back, we had this insecurity in Northeastern Province. And you tell the Askaris, there are some bandits here. They are just, where? Then they'll ask you, first of all, because they don't want to face the bandits, they're scared of the bandits. So when you tell them the bandits are in this direction, they will look for the bandits in this direction. Will they ever find them? Yeah. The cost of living is high, but who is responsible for the cost of living? Let us tame the independent power producers. Let us tame the monopolies in the country. Let me be honest with you. I'm talking as a patriot. I'm not beholden to anybody. I'm not in UDA. As a matter of fact, I'm in Azimio. But then sometimes you've got to be sensible. You just can't keep on taking this country for a ride all the time. Where the problem is? Monopolies. How did we kill all the milk industry in this country? How did we kill the oil industry, you know, the edible oils industry for all other people, including the cheap imports we used to get into the country? We went there, every aspect of this country, from the financial sector, where there's a state capture, to all these things. There are serious state captures in all this that started from independence. So when my brothers in Azimio say, the government, who is the government? Is it the government is not holding milk factories somewhere and is denying the people and telling them that you can't have milk or you can't have it for a price. The milk is monopolized by other people. Others, everything that Kenyans want for the cost to come down is monopolized by a political elite, a commercial political elite. And we are closest to them right now. So when we go out into the streets, are we trying to defend them? Or we're trying to defend the common masses out here who are suffering? You know, if your camels get lost into the east, don't go to the west to look for the camels. Get my point? Yeah. You don't go and look to the west to try and find your camels, and then you keep on moving around in the west all the day and saying, I can't see the camels. The camels, you're told, were lost in the west. We also have a saying in my language that people were on the tracks of a lion. You know, it ate one of their cows, so they wanted to go and fight it and kill it. So they kept on the tracks and then somehow lost the track because it rained a bit. But they saw the camel. You get my point? They saw the camel. And they said something kunoti lenjime. You know, I can see the lion, but where is the track? Where did we lose the track? Were you looking for tracks or you're looking for camels? Yeah. Sorry, for the lion. You wanted to fight the lion. So you're trying to tame the cost of high living in this country. Don't look for tracks in other places. Go straight to the lion and say, bring down this. Change these things, these things. That's what we want.
Not the truck.
Not the trucks.
Absolutely.
Don't ask yourself. Yeah, I've been following the tracks. I can't see the tracks anymore, but you're following the tracks of a lion, and the lion is there. Go and deal with it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The cost of living here is monopolized by a political, commercial elite that has monopolized this country, and we know the families. We know the people who have done that all the time. Deal with them, and deal with these things. KPLC, deal with that problem. You know, don't go in another direction and say that I'm going to deal with it like this. So there are things that, you know, we need to be honest, for God's sake, for once. For 30-something years I've been in politics myself. There's always been this dishonesty. Let us now, for one moment, and then if every time, everything we have done, from IPPG to the coalition government, to the cooperation government, to the merger, we still have our elections stolen. And they're all handshakes now here. now how do you then try and save your election? Invest in technology. It doesn't matter who is there. We used to have somebody called Montgomery, who was the supervisor of elections in this country. One Mzungu, those early days. You were not born. I think he remembers.
No, I remember Montgomery.
He remembers Montgomery.
I was in school.
And we used to have free and fair elections. Don't be cheated. The one credit you give to Kenyatta, Jomo Kenyatta, was that nobody could stand for the presidency, because when you stand for the presidency, then you're playing with fire. We could even lose your life. But anything below that, everything else, there was fairness. When you lose your elections, however close you are to him and however friendly you are to him, he will tell you, basi, kama watu wamekutukata, shauri yako. We used to have free and fair elections with only one supervisor. Now we are talking about a commission. You get my point? IEBC commission. And we keep on complaining that election, which is true. And in many cases, these commissions are human beings. The same ones you put in there are the ones who are going to rob you, and then tomorrow you say that they have been given money. Now Kenyans are saying these days, kila siku mnasema mnaibiwa kura na hata nyinyi simuibe, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't work. Let us invest in systems. I have lost many elections, not because I lost. I had a big margin, but I was rigged out and robbed of elections. Right. So I would want to see, a system. Yes, I would want to see a system that is going to protect me. Because I took Ahmed Isaac. I did more than anybody else in getting Ahmed Isaac into that thing. The first place he came to was my office when I was looking for a position to become even a member of the committee. And later on, based on small, family issues in Garissa, he did the worst damage to me. And
himself, and
Isaac, this man who is writing a book about that, one of the most, as far as I'm concerned, he has done more damage to the electoral process in this country than anybody else.
There you go.
You get my point. And now he tries to sanitize himself and he's saying, oh, my job was hard, because he wants to get a job from UDA, so he has to blame ODM.
So whose name does he use?
He has to blame ODM because he's looking for a job from this other side. You get my point?
I think that's unfair.
I'm
he's not here to defend himself.
So let us invest in systems, because even if you take, he's my brother, we come from the same family. And I still suffered under him.
It doesn't matter.
We want to invest in systems that are foolproof, so that you do not have to depend on individuals.
Thank you, Farah.
Because we even say now that the Supreme Court is corrupt. Who brought the Supreme Court there? We were the ones who pioneered that and got the Supreme Court with only one sole objective. Only the object of the Supreme Court is to determine presidential elections.
Thank you. Let me hear from Honorable Baya in reaction to just following the tracks, as he's putting the allegory there of a camel and the lion. So is the Jubilee also following the tracks of a camel and not really the lion?
No,
are you the lion or not the lion itself?
No, not the lion itself.
I think what President William Ruto is looking at the economy directly with his eyes, and he's seeing where the problems are, and he's trying to solve those problems. One, the issue of subsidies. We can rightfully say subsidies were abused.
Yes.
They were abused, and there are no two ways to it. I remember to the run up to the elections, there were these issues of the price of unga had gone very high, and I think it was retailing at 230. And we were promised that unga for 100 bob will come. And the government took measures, and they set up money for subsidies, and they put the money out there. Where that money went, only one or two people knows where that money went, but unga never came down. Why subsidies got lost? The money for subsidies were used to grease other people's pockets. Probably this money was used to finance the Azimio campaign.
No,
probably. I'm saying probably. I'm saying probably. Again, we had. Whatever happened in the electricity sector, the power sector, you say you put in a lot of subsidies there, but look at the bill that you pay. At the end of the day, you get taxed, you put more subsidies, you get taxed more, and you put in more subsidies. Is it working? It is not. Look at the fuel. When fuel was supposed to, when you allow the market forces to determine, we want to interfere with that, and we put in money for subsidies there. Where did the money go? Did the fuel come down? No. You remember when fuel was going up, it was going up, somebody threw in a lot of money there. Where did the money go for subsidies? People pocketed that money. Yeah. It was just an artificial break from the prices. Artificial break from the prices.
It went back straight.
It went back straight, went up. Because the money, today there are people who are suppliers of petrol today who have not been paid that money for subsidies. But if you go to government coffers, that money left treasury. It left the exchequer. It went somewhere, but it never got into the pockets of the people who actually supplied that fuel. Up to today, where did it go? Subsidies has created a big dent in the country's budget. A lot of money was used, money that had been used to give to counties to put fertilizer, seeds, and all that to grow the local economy and produce food. Money was used for subsidies, and it got lost. President Ruto is saying no, it's not the way to go. These subsidies, and he has reasons. Honorable Raila Odinga, because he was part of the architect of these subsidies, still believes that subsidies work. And that's why he's saying, we want the price of unga to come down by subsidies. He wants the cost of petrol to come down by subsidies. Because he is a beneficiary of the subsidies. And that's why he wants it to continue.
How is he a beneficiary?
Saying,
how is he a beneficiary?
we know the people we know about state capture. We know the people who own this economy. We know the people who control bigger part of this economy. So when money is released there, where does it go to? If you are in the banks industry, you are in petrol, you are in gas, you are in all this, and when money is released into subsidies, who are the beneficiaries of subsidies? They're the people who control 50% of the economy of this country. You know, in the US, I remember President, this guy who lost to Obama, the last...
McCain.
Not McCain, the other one.
The sitting president?
No, the other one before McCain, there was someone else. The one who said the 27%.
Clinton.
No, the 27% who controlled the economy.
Yes, he was called.
He lost.
Oh my God, I know.
He lost that election by that statement.
Go on.
I'll go.
No, not Al Gore. It was another one.
It
was a Republican.
Republican, yeah.
It was a Republican. It was a very closely contested election. And I remember there is a lady in Luo who gave birth to children and named one Obama and the other one the other president.
He was a senator, actually.
He was a senator.
Senator.
Yeah. The Republican.
Yeah,
He lost the economy because... Bush.
No.
He's a senator.
There's another one.
No.
There's another one.
No.
Mitt Romney.
Yeah. Yes, Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney.
Yes,
Exactly.
Mitt Romney.
Exactly.
He lost the election just because of that. You know, Obama came up with, the people who control the economy.
Yes.
The people who own everything. In every sector you'd find them. And Mitt Romney was a very well-off man, was a rich person, you know. And he lost the election because people did not believe if we give it to this person, he will help the poor, the poor people. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that almost 50% of this economy in this country is owned by probably the 3%.
Less than 1%.
1%. And it is those 1% that benefits from the subsidies. And that's why today they are insisting on the subsidies, because they own the economy.
It's actually a number of handful of...
Yes, if you throw the money like this as subsidies, it falls into the hands of this 1%.
About 50 people or 20 people.
Yes, it falls into their hands. And that's why they are today holding this government and say, we want subsidies, because they want the money for subsidies. William Ruto has said he will not put the money for subsidies in the areas that they want. So what is he saying? We will not put money in consumption subsidies. We will put it in production subsidies. That's why he's providing subsidized fertilizer to enhance production. You know, there are two ways you can look at subsidies from two angles. One, consumption. You want to subsidize unga, you want to subsidize milk, you want to subsidize this. But then you can also come back and say, I want to do production subsidies. Yeah. Let me subsidize fertilizer. Yeah. Let me subsidize animal feeds. Yeah. Let me subsidize this, so that it can help us to produce and reduce the cost of living. And that is what is important. Where the question actually is, where do we put subsidies? In consumption or in production?
Thank you.
For us to be able to develop this country, we need to produce.
One thing about,
we need to produce. Yes. Now, one of the contentious issues, especially when it comes to this production subsidies, is now the question of power. Do we subsidize power? Because it is a factor of production. Yes. Now, that is one of the things that is lingering in government, like what do we do with power? Do we subsidize it? And when we subsidize this power, where does the money go? Who are the producers of power? This IPP thing, the independent power producers, it is a con game.
By the political elite.
Is fraud. It is by the political elite, like Farah is putting it. There are people who have known where the money is. Money is in power production. They have invested there, but they're using these contracts to steal money from the common mwananchi. And they're the same people today saying, no, reduce the cost of power by subsidizing so that we throw in more money in subsidies in power so that they get more money. My friend, we need to give this country a break. And I want to agree, we must cancel those contracts. The people must return this money. And we are asking as Kenya Kwanza, where did the money for subsidies go? Because that money is enough to bring the cost of living down by encouraging production so that we bring the cost of living down.
But should you be asking where the money go? Because you have all the power and the tools
and that is
to actually know where the money
what we do.
went.
I think Parliament today is
not a question that we should be brought.
I want to say
Parliament is investigating the issues of independent power producers and all those contracts. And there's a committee, our committee, and our chairperson of energy is very keen. We must end this fraud, this stealing of Kenyan money through these IPPs. And we know who stole them. We know the handshake regime is guilty as charged.
Okay,
the handshake
let me just
let me just take a short break and we circle back, because I know when you begin, we won't be going. I'll begin with you. I can see you're fulminating with anger.
To treat a patient because they know the guy who made the patient sick. Ridiculous. And they're letting the patient die because they know the guy who made the patient sick.
Allow us to take a short break. Well, we circle back with more. You're watching Siasa Fiesta here. Don't go away.
I can't believe
KTN News. Get the whole story. Your Wealth in 90 Seconds, brought to you by Standard Chartered Priority Banking. Will you have adequate cash flow in your retirement?
I'm Paul Njoki, Head of Affluent Banking and Wealth Management, Kenya and East Africa. Our Standard Chartered Global Research shows that most people would like to retire by the age of 56. The question is, will you have sufficient cash flows to last you 2 or more decades after retirement? At Standard Chartered Priority Banking, we have the expertise to help our clients invest in Kenya government bonds, which give returns of up to 13%, or global bonds and mutual funds that give returns of up to 10% based on the client risk appetite, to earn return now and secure cash flow at retirement. My team of relationship managers, investment advisors, and insurance advisors are here to serve you and help you achieve your life goal. Welcome to Priority Banking today.
Join Standard Chartered Priority Banking today. Email prioritybanking.ke@sc.com. Wealth expertise made to matter.
The Kenya Judiciary will host the 3rd Regional Symposium on Greening Judiciaries in Africa on 3rd to 5th April 2023 to discuss the role of judiciaries in mitigating climate change and promoting environmental conservation. The symposium, whose theme is strengthening the role of judiciaries in addressing climate change in Africa, will incorporate the 3rd Chief Justices Forum on Environmental Law and the 3rd General Conference of the Africa Judicial Education Network on Environmental Law. Ajanel. The over 300 delegates include 26 Chief Justices, heads of judicial education institutions, judges, judicial officers, experts, and stakeholders drawn from the African continent and beyond. The symposium will empower and sensitize judiciaries to play their role in delivering green justice that promotes sustainable development and protects the planet, making Kenya the regional hub of judicial and social justice dialogues. For more details, visit www.greenjustice.africa.
Changes must be there and the changes must be accepted. Because there are some other changes, even you say you are not supporting it, you are not doing what, you cannot reverse.
Naivas Kikapu Kibonge. Pick up key extra offers. Choose from a kibunda of products. Get kibigi discounts. Kwa hivyo, you can beba more of your favorite fresh foods and household products. Naivas Kikapu Kibonge. The biggest season saving countrywide. Naivas saves you money.
What would you consider as Britain as your competitive advantage?